So which of these terrestrial channels screens the most factual shows? The answer is ITV1.
You're watching Wednesday's Right Stuff. Thank you for that. Steve First, Carol Thatcher and comic Scott Kapura, whose new show, Scott Kapura Goes Much Deeper. It was at London Soho Theatre on Monday. Still to come this morning, fascinating discussion. Can you shock teenagers out of having sex? I want to find out what you make of this controversial viral video that shows a screaming girl in school uniform delivering a baby in the playground. It is certainly disturbing, but will it persuade young people to use contraceptives or avoid sex? 0207 173 5555. That's the number for your thoughts. But first, is too much terrestrial television aimed at thickos? Yes, it is, says Sir Michael Parkinson, who dreams of the days when telly was made for people, as I keep saying, with an IQ larger than the numbers you find in a bingo bag. I find myself dreaming, these are his words, not mine, by the way, of a television service where chefs are no longer allowed to rissole the language, or food critics, I don't know why I looked at you then, Scott, or food critics encouraged to compare a well-cooked pork chop with the Sistine Chapel. No more police chasing yobbos in cars, and most of all, please God, no more so-called documentary shows with titles like My 20-Ton Tumour, My Big Fat Head, and Wolf Girl.
Oh, I love that show. I love that show.
I thought it was Wolf Boy.
No,
anyway,
well, whatever.
I'm not sure I agree with Parkinson entirely, but, and we were talking about this off camera over the last couple of days, I find myself sat at home day after day, night after night, wondering why I can't find anything that I really fancy watching. And I ask myself, am I too old, too middle class, too bright, too fussy? Maybe too nostalgic for the likes of The Good Life or Life on Earth, James Burke's Connections, World in Action, that kind of stuff? So our TV boss is guilty of putting populism above all else, of clogging the airwaves with talent shows while leaving real art, culture and science to obscure digital channels that no one watches. The TV watchdog, by the way, agrees with Parky. While they note there's been an increase in factual shows on terrestrial channels, it tends to be lowbrow ones like Location, Location, Location and Cash in the Attic that are behind the rise. They're popular, but, Steve, as I'm sure you're aware, they're also cheap, and I think that's probably got something to do with this.
Yeah, I mean, we're living in a time now where ad revenue is just dropping off massively, especially for independent broadcasters. And even the notion of broadcasting is now a thing of the past. It's not broadcasting, they're essentially narrowcasting channels, so that you have one thing on one channel and you marginalise documentaries, and there's a history channel and a gardening channel and a music channel. Whereas, I mean, live music's dropped off TV except for the exception of Jules Holland. Yeah. Even pop acts find it impossible to get on TV because those Saturday morning shows won't have them on because it's too expensive to have pop bands on. Eventually, everything is so homogenised.
There is a solution here, isn't there? The BBC takes millions of public money and spends it on a whole range of products and outlets, radio as well, which we like. But on television, it does seem to be fairly fixated with populist talent shows, rather like its commercial rivals. Maybe the BBC should stop doing, you know, a search for this and a search for that, and what's the problem with whatever, and actually do the more highbrow stuff.
The problem is because these shows pay for themselves, because they're free. I mean, ostensibly, by comparison to doing a costume drama, these are almost free shows. So, you know, we find it hard to even sell stuff abroad now because it's too expensive to buy for other countries who are also in the same problem. So talent shows, the thing that we sell are format rights now. But unfortunately, they only make huge amounts of millions for the few people that control those format rights, like Simon Cowell.
You don't look very optimistic for...
No, I think it's absolutely... I think it's appalling. I mean, you know, and unfortunately, people watch it because it's what the people want. And it is what people want. People like to watch mentally challenged people being laughed at and ridiculed by...
Well, I like watching celebrities being tortured, you know what I mean? I mean, when they take away their food and pimp slap them a little bit, it's hilarious. I just think it's snobbery. I do think that people take what they're given. I think TV audiences are as clever as the programs they're watching. And if you give them more clever programs, they will watch them. But if you say, here's Carol Thatcher, and we're not going to let her have the cake, we'll watch that too, because it's kind of funny, really.
But is there too much emphasis on on those kind of shows? Do you think the balance is wrong, that we're out of balance, that we need to sort of
I think
shore things up a
television's
bit?
kind of becoming defunct. I think everything's going online. I think all this is called offline programming. The show we're doing right now is called that by most TV companies.
Yeah.
And I think that that's the future. The future is the computer screen. The future is more individual selections, more intimate television, I think.
Now, what about the individual who complained? I believe Sir Michael's article was in the Radio Times or something, wasn't it? OK, he seems to be a little bit prone to complaining. Indeed, the Daily Telegraph, a columnist, has described him this morning as narky-parky.
Right.
Now, most of the decades of his very illustrious television career, we only had a handful of channels to choose from. So very limited choice. If you
don't have a satellite dish or a Freeview, you still have a relatively few number of channels. I mean, that hasn't changed.
Look at
one more.
But, I mean, if you don't like what's on terrestrial TV, an enormous number of people, millions of them, are simply going to the other remote control and going on to satellite. And there is more choice than ever before. Now, I happen to watch television to be entertained. I watch Neighbours because the sun shines more in Australia than it does on our soap operas, for instance. Now, lots of people wouldn't consider that a very highbrow programme, but I love it to bits.
So you don't have any problem? You think Parky's whinging and that TV's OK?
Yes, because there's so much of it.
Yeah, no, there is so much of it, but I don't understand, because I have the full satellite, and I literally sit there, and I end up watching, with my girlfriend who has no interest in cars at all, watching old reruns of Top Gear, which is on 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Oh, I don't.
Simply because I find it vaguely entertaining, even though I've seen it before. I'd rather watch that than almost anything else.
What are you wearing when you watch that? The thing is, I just think that you can download so much stuff online now anyway illegally. I would never do that.
Of course.
But there is so much to download, and thank God for American TV, or you guys wouldn't have anything. And if you just time it right and buy TiVo, you know, and record things before, you know, it's easy.
OK, let's throw it open to you. Is Michael Parkinson right? Is too much TV aimed at thickos? Let's see what people say, Kirsty.
We have Susan on line 1.
Susan, good morning.
Hello.
Hi there. What do you think of TV at the moment? Too much for thickos?
Well, I don't agree completely with Michael Parkinson. Obviously, I mean, I think he's gone a bit too far the other way. But at the same time, I do think, as some of the people on your panel said, there should be more balance. And there's so much of this rubbish that's on all the time. And, you know, there's masses and masses of it. There's plenty there for people. You know, surely there should be at least a few things that challenge you a bit more. I mean, I can remember in the heyday of the BBC, there were some marvellous dramas and educational programmes, and the BBC's remit was to educate as well as entertain. And I think it's sort of everything's going to the lowest common denominator.
You don't think, I mean, to be fair, I mean, you sit there and you've got the Coasts of this world, which is a highly informative programme. Panorama the other night, again, extremely informative programme, a great Strand shame it's so short. It'd be better to see a bit longer. Do you think the BBC... Because I think this is the only way you can get the balance right, is the BBC would have to cut back on entertainment in order to put out more highbrow programmes, but would probably lose audience along the way.
Yeah, I can understand that. It is a very difficult position, really, for them.
Yeah. What do you think? Do you think they should do that? Do you think they should risk losing audience, seeing their figures go down, but put out a broader range of programmes still?
Well, I think they could try and make them more interesting and try and attract people to be more interested in them. I mean, like Channel 4, I watched the 1066 the last couple of nights, and that was absolutely brilliant, and I think that would have appealed to all sorts of people, because it's...
I think part of the problem I would suggest is that with so many channels, it gets harder and harder for TV bosses to get their best programmes out there, that, you know, it's harder to know what's worth watching. In the old days, of course, a few channels, we'd all watch The Good Life or...
It's important to stress that a lot of those programmes were rubbish as well in the old days.
Oh, God, yeah.
There was some terrifyingly poor comedy, badly produced drama, and tedious game shows, so...
Indeed.
I like variety, like music and dance and stuff. Where's all that? What about my needs? Right?
Your needs are satisfied too often, Scott. That's what I've heard. Susan, thank you for the call. After the ads, can you shock teenagers out of having sex? A local council thinks you can. They've released a viral video that at first glance appears to be school kids fighting. It's only when one of the girls starts to pull a baby's head out from between her friend's legs that you realise what is going on. Disturbing for sure, but will it persuade youngsters to practice safe sex? 0207 173 5555 is the number. Can you shock teenagers out of having sex? You tell me in 3.
The Department of Health say shock tactics don't get the safe sex message across. Is this true or is it false? Find out after the break.